Hey, good morning, everybody. Randy Lynch, you're upside down. There you go. I thought maybe gravity, you're having some gravity issues at your house today.
I have it on the charger, but it won't let me flip it upside down so it can still stand.
Well, if you have to be upside down, we understand. I just wanted to make sure you knew you were upside down. All right, so the whole purpose of this morning is to kind of walk you through gathering stats and data to use for buyers, for sellers, for marketing, for whatever it is you're looking to do. Many of you have asked sort of a question here and a question there about how I pull what I pull and what I pull for conversations with sellers and things of that nature. And so I thought what we would do is just kind of informally ask you guys specifically, okay, what is it that you struggle with when you're pulling data? What specifically do you want to focus on? And I'll just pull examples of what it is you're looking for information on by hopping into the MLS and kind of showing you how I do what I pull. So with that as the foundation, talk to me about what numbers would be the most helpful to you, so that we can be specific about showing you things that you want to see.
Oh, well, can I say something?
Hi, Karen.
Hi. So I've been pulling my stats all from the MLS, but I found out today that you can actually pull them up from command. How does that work?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that because I'm not sure. I mean, through command, you have a neighborhood nurture tool that does pull in some stats. So great question about use. What I would encourage is starting tomorrow, we have Tech Tuesdays returning with 11 and 1 o'clock classes on that. And you can grab a one-on-one with Joe McHugh to kind of dive you into the command version of those. They're not MLS specific stats. They're more marketing stats that you can send out in an email.
Yeah,
So
that's what I want.
Yeah. So do plug in with Joe on that one. I'm gonna pass the baton to him on that one. So you'll see tomorrow at some point tomorrow you'll see an email go out with a link to Command Tech one-on-ones. You can book a one-on-one with him via that link.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Randy and then Sherry Lee. Go ahead, Randy.
Sorry, I had to close my door. Okay, so I am working with a difficult seller whose list price is not falling in line with what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
Obviously, my opinion is it's listed too high. So I'd like to pull some stats together from him from the MLS on the neighborhood and how things like how quickly things are on the market and in regards to the list price and whatnot. I know we've briefly spoken about it and I have it up on the screen, but I don't know where to go from there.
Got it. Yeah. So I'll be happy to show you. I'll do kind of my full battery of seller stats to help people kind of see what's going on in the market to make a good decision. I will do all of that for you. What else, Shirley?
Since I haven't sold a lot of things, I would really love to be reminded of how to get the stats for the market center so that I can say my market center, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I would second that, Rick. This is the first time I'm doing this, and I've never really pulled any stats, so it might be a refresher to others, but it would be new to me. If you could just show what kind of stats would be relevant, for a buyer consultation to try and win that deal.
Got it. Okay, so buyer consult stats, market center stats, and seller stats. Anything else? That kind of runs the gamut of what we use stats for, doesn't it? All right, so let's do this. Let me first show you, this may be a repeat for some, but it is the foundation of where I go for stats, whether they're your stats or the market center stats. So I'm going to show you that first, and then kind of pivot to seller stats, and then pivot to buyer stats. So the very first thing we're going to do, let me share my screen with you. Where are you, MLS? Here we are. Okay. Linda, are you seeing the MLS? Okay, perfect. So, so once you're in the MLS and I use this cross-property search. I don't use anything but the cross-property search because from the cross-property search, I can access everything, and I don't have to make it specific about single family or condo. From cross-property, I can make it whatever I want. So that's where I live with all of my stats. You can do it different ways. This is I'm going to show you how I specifically do it, so that you have that as a foundation. So let's just, I want to show you what I call the box, right? And so let's say I want to figure out how many properties I personally have sold in the last 12 months, right? Versus how many properties the market center has sold. So I think what I'll do is I'll skew it down to single family, right? So single family in Fairfield County. That's, for whatever reason, those are the numbers that we're attempting to utilize. And so if you scroll, so all you're going to do is click on the property type with single family, click the where, right? Sometimes you just want everything. So if you want everything, you would keep the county just blank. And if you keep county and city blank, you get everything. So we're just going to say, we're going to skew that down to Fairfield County. I don't want active listings. So in the status over here on the left, I'm going to say closed. Typically it will give you 0 minus 365. So that's a rolling 12 months back. If you wanted all of last year, you would change the 0 minus 360 to 1/1/2020 to 12/31/2020, right? And that will give you all of last year, right? So that's how. So you can make determinations based on what time period you're looking for by changing the date in the closed category. And then the only other thing you do is you scroll down here to the bottom, and you can pop in on list agent and or list office, right? Or sale agent and sale office. I don't encourage you, see down here it says office IDs for combined listing and sales and office IDs for office listings and sales combined. I encourage you not to use those. Run the list one and run the sale one and add them together. Because I find that oftentimes when you run the list one and then you run the sale one and you add them together, you get a different number than if you just let the MLS do the combined listing and sales activity. I'm not 100% sure why that is. I never spent a ton of time trying to figure it out. Instead, I just do them separately. So say, let's see, I'll just use a dummy code. So say that's so you put your code in here. If your code is 1234 for list agent, you pop your code into the list or co-list agent code. That's weird. Hold on a second. My dummy code may not be working any longer. Hold on a second. Let me see if that makes a difference. Okay, so so this particular agent sold 12 listings last year, right? You can see right down here, 12 matches, so 12 listings. And then if you pop that into the sale agent and another 10 buyers, right? So 12 plus 10 is a total of 22 transactions for this particular agent. If you wanted to know that information about the market center, you would just kind of come over here and put in the market center code. If you live in the Stamford Market Center, that is 3548, right? And so now you've got 328 sales, listings sold last year in Fairfield County. And if you move that down into sale, and oftentimes you have to tab out of it, you've got 603 buyer sides, right? So for a total of, in Fairfield County, a little less than 1,000 transactions for that particular market center. I will also tell you that right now, if you want to utilize just your market center, you can do that. Or if you want to add the two together, I'll give you the codes for the locations. Out of the Stamford Market Center, you'd be using 3548. Out of the Ridgefield Market Center, you'd be using KELW 120. Oops. KELW 120. We do have another location, two new locations in the MLS that separate things out for if you're using like my team and I. The numbers I give you are always all of us together, right? Even though the MLS kind of breaks them out into separate quote unquote offices. And so the Newtown location is KELW 130. And then the Westport location is KWLY 01. Right, so those are the four codes that you can pull on for the market center side. Now, let me just go back and give you, so this particular agent, right, 12 listings. If you click results on those 12 listings, you get the inventory that was sold. And if you come down to the bottom and click on stats and then tabular, you get what I call the box. And I call it the box because all the stats are in, yes, you guessed it, a box. So therefore, when you kind of pull the box on yourself or the box on an agent that you may be up against to kind of know what the numbers are against a competitor or the market center, you'll get information in this box. Now, here's what I can tell from this box. The number of closed show up here, right? So 12 closed for the 12-month period of time that I asked for. You get average days on market here for that 12-month period of time. So 105 days on market, right? You get an average list to sale price over here. However, I encourage you to actually do the math on that because the math is oftentimes different. I can't tell you why the math is different from the MLS to doing it by hand, but it oftentimes is. So the way you get list to sale ratio is you look here for the average closed price versus the average list price, and you just simply divide. So the average closed price of $574,167 divided by the average list price of $597,783 gives you, well, in this case, it's dead on. It's 96.0%, which is what it says here. However, oftentimes if it's 96 and change, it'll round down to 96. So I want to use the and change to just make the numbers better, right? If it's 96.4 or 5, sometimes it rounds it down to 96, and I would prefer to have the exact data. So those are some stats or some information that you can pull from here that you can also then, if you go back and want the market center's information, you just simply go back to criteria and take out your agent code and pop in the market center. So we'll use the Stamford Market Center as an example. Again, hit results. And once the results populate, down at the bottom of the first page, you'll see stats and then tabular, which brings you now the box for the market center. And so the market center's days on average days on market 69. So if you were this agent that I used and your average days on market were 105, but the market center's average was 69, I think I would use the market center's average in my numbers to say, as long as you change it to my team and I have an average days on market of 69 days, that's a better number than your personal 105, right? Here, the market center list to sale, right? This says 99%. So even if you do the math and it's a little higher or a little lower, 99% is better than 96%. So again, if the market center's numbers are better than your numbers, just utilize the market center's numbers and talk about the numbers for my team and I. That way you always get to use the better of the two, right? If the market center's numbers are below yours, clearly you would use yours, and you get to change the pronoun to I did this versus my team and I did this. So generally speaking, days on market and average list to sale ratio are what I use the box for comparison's sake. I either compare agent to agent. If I know my competitors, I may look to see what their numbers are, or if I'm looking to understand office to office what that looks like, I will use that data. Any questions on where to pull information for yourself versus information for the market center?
No, that was helpful, Rick. But one question, how do we know what our ID number is? Is that something that we just find in our own MLS?
You mean your MLS ID number?
Yeah, my agent ID. You said you put an agent ID down below?
Yeah, it's the ID that you use to log in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's the same for, your code is unique to you, and it's what you use to log in that you would use to pull your own personal numbers.
And Rick, you said compare yourself to a competitor. Is that something that I would have access to? You know, if it's a Coldwell Banker or whatever, would I be able to do that?
Sure, you just look up so if you go to search agent, and you know that you're up against Tom Smith.
Rick, really quick, I don't want to interrupt you, but if you guys are on the same screen as Rick was doing where you were putting your own stuff in, there's two little boxes right next to the question mark where you're entering that stuff. If you just click on that, you can find anyone. So you don't have to leave the screen and go back.
Yeah, I'll show you that in just half a second. So if there's an agent search piece in here that you can look up anybody. So here's T. Smith's, and so say the one that you're going to, well, there's no Tom Smith, but there's a Tim Smith or a Tracy Smith, right? And here are their codes, agent ID codes, so that you can grab them. You can grab them from that search tool, or as Randy was talking about, the cross property search. If we go back there and go back with where we were at the bottom here, if you wanted to look up somebody else, these two little things here are a search tool. So you can pop Smith, T, and then and then you get names there. So two ways to go ahead and grab those. Does that answer that question, Sherry Lee?
And also, like, you could do that with a market center, so I could compare a Stanford market center stats with another market center stats, same way.
So you can compare. So you could run the Stanford Coldwell Banker office numbers versus your office's numbers and do a comparison of units or list to sale or days on market, things like that. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so and it's all the same. You just it's determined by these codes that you would put in here. But then as soon as you run the code, just go to results, go to results, and then stats, and then tabular, and you'll get the
stats.
The box for whatever it is you've put in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so that was the quick one. Now let's talk about seller stats. Because there's a whole bunch of things that I personally use and run. If I'm getting ready to have a conversation with a seller, I don't have conversations with sellers unless I've gone through and looked at all the numbers as it relates to that particular person's property, right? And so let's use an example. So let's say we have a single family property. Where's Randy? Hey, Randy. would feel free to say yes or no. Can I use
Yes,
property that you're inquiring about as an example?
sure.
Okay, because this way I can do most of the
Yep.
work for you. As a matter of fact, you can just take some notes.
Absolutely.
So as Randy said, she's got a listing right now that that is likely priced maybe a little bit out of the realm of what the market is looking for, and so we'll utilize that. And so here's what I want to say to everybody on the call. Randy kind of volunteered, or at least didn't turn me down when I asked her to volunteer to use this property. This is not a discussion point, right, for this property, right? Some of you may well have buyers who are interested in this property. Recognize that you would do the same work for your buyers. So this isn't us telling stories out of school for this particular seller. And yet, I just want to go on record as saying, we're just simply using this as an example, knowing that Randy's doing the work on the background anyway, on the back end anyway. So in this particular case, the property is located in Ridgefield, right? And so the first thing I want to do is kind of take a quick look at what's going on in the kind of price pockets in the area, in the town that I'm listing in. Now, price pockets will be different depending on the municipality, right? So price pockets in Ridgefield are going to be different than price pockets in Bethel, are going to be different than price pockets in Greenwich. So you need to understand how pockets work in each of those municipalities to know really where you're searching. In Ridgefield today, I would say that where I would start is kind of anything under 400, and then 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to $1 million, and then $1 million to maybe $1.5 million, and then $1.5 million and above. Just kind of giving you the thought about how I look at price pockets per town. And to shortcut this, the pocket that this particular property might show up in, I think Randy would agree that we're in that 6 to 8 pocket, right? And so the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the entire town. The entire town, and so what I'm talking about right now is month supply of inventory. The very first thing I'm going to pull are month supply of inventory, right? So in this particular case, I'm going to say single family in Ridgefield in Fairfield County, and I want to know how many properties closed in the last 90 days. So I'm changing that closed status to 0 minus 90, right? And what I get, I have to move stuff out of the way here. What I get is 106 properties have closed in the last 90 days. You see where I'm getting that right down here at the bottom? Now, what we need to calculate in order to get to month supply of inventory is absorption rate. How many homes are being absorbed per month? So that's a 90-day number, that 106. So what I need to do then is divide that number, 106, by 3 months to get a month per month number. And I get 35 and a third, right? 35.33 homes per month. Let me ask this question. Why, if I'm looking for a monthly number, don't I just do 0 minus 30?
You would like an average.
Exactly right, Erica. We need more data to make sure that the number is relevant. And 90 days gives you then 3 months worth of data that if you divide for the average over those 3 months, you get a number that we can work with. It could well be that if I did 0 minus 30, I could get a number way more than 35, or I could get a number way less than 35, depending on the time of year, depending on if something occurred, right? That might have been an anomaly. Let's just do it. Let's just see what happens if I say 0 minus 30. So it's 39, right? So it's a little bit higher. It's not hugely higher, and yet that would still skew things a little bit differently, right? So 0 minus 90. Then divide that number by 3, so you get 35.33. That is the absorption rate for the town of Ridgefield as of right now, which means looking backwards for the past 3 months, we've seen an average of 35 1/3 homes come off the market and be sold per month. So what does that, what do you then do with that? Well, now we have to use that number in relation to the number of properties that are actually on the market, right? So I'm going to unclick the closed box in status. I'm going to click your active box, and that will give me the total number of active listings in the entire town of Ridgefield currently. And that number is 46, right? 46. So then we do a little math. If there are 46 homes on the market active and 35 1/3 are selling per month, how many months supply of inventory actually exists? Well, you take that active number of 46 and you divide it by 35 1/3. And so you have 1.3 months supply of inventory. Make sense? 1.3 months. So is that a seller's market or a buyer's market?
Sellers.
Right? That's a crazy, crazy seller's market. I mean, a month's supply of inventory for an entire town is it's why it feels the way it feels, right? If you're looking for buyers in Ridgefield presently, because there's no inventory, right? And so that should be a really good sign for sellers. It should mean that sellers are experiencing lots of showing activity. It should mean that buyers are from that showing activity receiving an offer or multiple offers in a relatively quick period of time. Right, and we're going to talk about using a different tool a little later on to give you what that time frame actually is. So that's month supply of inventory. Now, I want you to recognize that month supply of inventory is specific per price category, right? That's for the entire town and all price categories. And it is possible that we have different month supply of inventory happening in different price categories, right? So let me just give you 2 quick examples. So in the 6 to 8 category, where Randy Seller's property lies, so now we're going to change that up here in the price. We're going to put 6 to 800,000. And then we're going to come back down and do closed, 0 minus 90. So in this category, 29 homes have sold in the last 90 days. 29 divided by 3 is 9 2/3, right? 9.67 homes per month. So again, that's the quick calculation for absorption rate. So in the $600,000 to $800,000 price category in Ridgefield, in the last 90 days, we have an average of 9.67 homes being absorbed every single month. How we turn that into month supply of inventory is we click off of closed and onto active. And right now we have 10 months supply of inventory. Excuse me. Sorry. Scratch that. We have 10 properties on the market. 10 properties on the market divided by the absorption rate of 9.67. You don't have to be a math genius to figure that one out, right? It's just a smidge over 1 month supply of inventory. So in the $600,000 to $800,000 category, can you see that the pace of the market, the velocity of the market is actually moving faster than the town as a whole? Which means sellers in that price category should be seeing things move even faster when their property goes on the market than the town as a whole. And this is really important, guys, because sometimes our sellers hear certain things from neighbors, from friends, or they hear it, they get a newsletter, or they see it online or something, and they think that those numbers that are generic for an entire town, or that they're hearing from a neighbor, are specific to them. And that's not always the case, right? Sometimes things are moving faster or slower in their pocket than the entire town. Just for grins and giggles, let's redo the math for anything over $1.5 million. right? Anything over 1.5 million, we've got 14 properties that have closed in the last 90 days. Divide that by 3, you're at 4 2/3, so 4.67. 4.67 divided into 12 properties on the market gives you 2.6 months supply of inventory, right? So now again, it's easy to say, well, all of these numbers are really low, and so it's a seller's market all across this town. Well, that's true, except if you have a seller who's in the 1.75 million range, do you see how that range is moving slightly slower by about double than the town average? Almost 3 times as slow as in the $600,000 to $800,000 range. So if what they're hearing from their friends is, well, we put our house on the market and it sold in 12 minutes with 17 offers, and they're wondering why theirs hasn't, sometimes these numbers start to give them some answers, right? Because you can expect it to take about 3 times longer to get a property under agreement in the $1.7 million range than in the $700,000 range, right? So if it took a week in the $700,000 range, well, it might take 2 to 3 weeks in the $1.7 million range because of the velocity of the market, which the stats tell us. Go ahead, Randy.
I just want to go back. I think I got confused, or maybe we were just saying so many names and numbers that I could have wrote it down, but you might have misspoke just slightly. When we were doing the 600 to 800 closed 0 to 90 days, it was 29 homes. We divided it by 3 and we got the absorption rate of 9 2/3 for homes per month.
Yes.
And then in order to get the month's supply, you had mentioned take the 10 homes, which are what's active, and divide it by the absorption rate, or is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. So I just wrote it wrong this time when you did the 1.5, because you
Yeah.
said the absorption rate divided by the actives.
Yeah, so you want to take your actives and divide the absorption rate
The
into
opposite.
actives. Correct.
Actives divided by absorption rate. Okay. Sorry. My bad.
Yeah, no worries. So so the big picture here, and the reason I did it a couple of different times is to just so you hear it a couple of different times, right? So that's month supply of inventory. I'll give you a quick example of where this can really come in handy. I helped an agent who had I think I mentioned this on a Zoom call one day one morning last week. Whew. I helped an agent figure out a month's supply of inventory and how to help get sellers to reduce a price on a co-op for like $450,000 in Larchmont, right? Now, truth be told, what do I know about co-ops in Larchmont? The answer is next to nothing. And yet going in and educating myself with this same data, I could present an argument as if I knew almost everything, right? And what they were hearing, what the sellers were hearing was that co-ops in Larchmont are selling. I don't understand why ours is not. And when you started to break things down, what I realized was they were 100% right. 1-bedroom co-ops in the 150 to 250 range were selling, because when you did absorption rate and month supply of inventory down there, it was a solid seller's market. When you went to over 400 for 2-bedroom co-ops in Larchmont, which is what they owned, the month supply of inventory jumped from about 4 to about 19 months supply, right? So clearly now we don't have such big numbers going on in the example we're giving you, but depending on what you're trying to figure out, that alone to me was enough to be able to go back and say, okay, so here's why you're hearing one thing and experiencing something else. And so one of the things that I did was I did a 400 and over month supply of inventory and then a 400 and under month supply of inventory. And guess what? The month supply of inventory took a nosedive by like 7 or 8 months. So then I got to ask the question, knowing that you're currently priced at 450 and the month supply of inventory in that price bracket is 19 months, and the price bracket Just below that, that $200,000 to $300,000 price bracket is about 11 months. Which price bracket do you think you could position yourself in to find a buyer faster, to get to a closing table faster, to shortcut your process? Do you see how when you use stats and then you ask questions around stats, that there's only one answer to that question? Regardless of what the seller wants, there's only one answer that logically answers the question I asked, right? If one price bracket is moving far slower than the other, the only answer is, well, one of the things we could do to shortcut it is to move price brackets. That is correct. Right? Whether they're willing to do that is an entirely different conversation. However, the facts show you exactly what they need to do. Whew. Okay. Any questions on month supply of inventory and how to use it? Guys, you can wield it like a weapon, because it is a weapon. And just in case there's some unique clarity around what months equal what kind of a market, right? 0 to 4 months will be a seller's market. That 5 or 5 into 6 months is that transitional market. And then anything over 6, really 6.5 and over is going to be a buyer's market. Any questions on month supply of inventory or its use? No? Okay. One of the other things that I used from a numbers perspective, let me bring something up to share with you. Hold on, let me find it first, and then I will pop it up, because this is yet another tool that if you're not using for these conversations, I think you're missing the boat on. And so this is the selling strategies tool. Let me share it with you. Selling strategies tool. You've all heard the real estate saying, 2 weeks, no showings, we've got to make an adjustment on the price, or 10 showings, no offers, we need to make an adjustment in the price, right? Well, this is another version of that, right? And this selling strategies chart basically says, it gives you 4 categories. Are you getting showings, but no one's making an offer? If you're getting offers, well, then you're priced right, right? Clearly that category number 1, we hardly ever have to address, because if people are priced properly, they're getting offers. Are you getting showings and no offers? Well, that's a different category. Are you experiencing low showings, right? And frankly, right now, for most price points in most towns and cities across Fairfield County, and I would venture to guess moving into Litchfield, Hartford, and New Haven counties as well. If you have a property hit the market and you don't have a line out the door, something's already wrong. Because inventory is so short right now that people are literally lining up. Showing time showings are selling out in that first weekend, right? Some of you have experienced it. If that's not happening, you're in that low showings category. And then of course, drive-bys only is like no showings. This co-op I was working on hadn't had somebody come in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, just no showings. And I think in the last 3 weeks, there were 0 showings. And so the conversation I got to have was, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm curious, based on this chart, which of these 4 categories do you believe, based on the current traffic, which of these 4 categories do you believe that you show up in? And they'll pick one. Usually, they're going to diagnose themselves by saying either number 2 or number 3. Right? Even if the property received an offer, you need to judge the offer by A, how far off of asking price was it? And B, did it come together? Right? Because just because someone receives an offer, if it was 15% off of the asking price, or 20% off of the asking price, or 10% off of the asking price, that's sending the same kind of message, right? So be careful that you don't allow sellers to have semantics creep in to not categorize themselves correctly. Because just because you received one offer that was 12% off the asking price and then nobody decided to move from that, doesn't mean that you're in category number 1, priced right, I'm receiving offers. And here's what I want you to recognize. Please note, look what I highlighted here. The S is very important here. Because if you're truly priced right today, you are receiving offers, not an offer. Same thing here, showings and no offers. Right? So be careful that you don't get sucked into a semantics conversation, because that's not the point here. And then once they categorize themselves as in number 2 or number 3, what I do is say, okay, so I would agree with that, or are you certain, right? Depending on the category they pop themselves in. And then ask the second question. So the good news, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that this document also not only offers you a diagnosis, but it offers you a cure. And so if you've categorized yourself in low showings, the cure is a price adjustment of between 6 and 12%. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in order to help you figure out whether or not you should be towards the 6% side or the 12% side, I'd like for you to look at the initial, right, depending on how long you've been on the market, the initial week or 2, maybe the first week of traffic versus the last 2 weeks. Have we seen traffic increasing or decreasing? If we've seen traffic decreasing, that means that you're categorizing yourself in category number 3. However, you may fast be heading into category number 4, which means the cure then is going to be the higher end of this number. If you're seeing a steady pace of low showings, well, then maybe we can be in the middle someplace. And if you're actually seeing an increase in showings in the last week or 2, well, then maybe we can stay towards the low end, right? But that's how I use traffic to help them determine, because 6% and 12% are 2 very different numbers, right? And so then you'll take the number that you're at, say it's, I don't know, say 749, and multiply it by, say, 88%, because that's a 12% adjustment, right? 12% off of a 749 house is 659. Now, again, the conversation is always fluid. It's about being in partnership and having a conversation to say, okay, so here's this range. The fact that we have low showings means that we're in this range. These are national statistics, right? That work everywhere. I've used them over and over. I've used them in Connecticut. I've used them in New York. I've used them in Massachusetts. I've used them with condos. I've used them with land. I've used them with single family properties. I've used them from little tiny $79,000 whatevers to $3 million, $4 million properties. The numbers work, right? The numbers work. And then you paint a picture, right? Here's what 10% off would be. Here's what 12 would be. Here's what 6 would be. I'm curious, which of those are you willing to attempt? Which of those are you willing to move to? Right? Remember, with the market moving so quickly, it may be that even though by all rights, a property should be in the mid sixes, if it were priced in the mid to high sixes at 679 or even 689 or even 699, with what's going on today, by tucking it underneath that price point, you may decide to be attractive to a whole bunch more people and drive the number back up to where you wanted it anyway. But without actually taking that step, you're not allowing the right people to view the property, right? It's about getting eyeballs on the property. And this is just another conversation you can have to help attempt them to do that. Any questions on the selling strategies conversation? No?
I love it.
I have a question. Hello.
Yes, Karen.
So with the comps, you know, I run the comps, I am good with the numbers, I go to the listing presentation, we go over it, very good. And what I usually do, I have the sellers keep the comps, although people have told me they don't want to do it because another agent can come in and dispute the comps. The other thing is that if I walk out of the listing presentation without the signature, it's a low, you know, percentage that I'll get the listing. But would you recommend leaving the comps or not? Just showing it on the screen, on the computer.
Yeah, I think you almost answered your own question, right? And then I'll give you my thoughts on it. Is that leaving without a signature is more of an issue than it is leaving or not leaving the comps, right? So recognizing that you have valid comps and walking them through those comps and then asking the question based on the data that we've just reviewed, where do you believe your home should be positioned to outperform any and all competition, and having them choose that number. Once they've chosen the number and you're in agreement with it, then we close, right? And so if for whatever reason we've closed 5 different times and we're still leaving, for me, I always left everything with them such that they were constantly reminded of me and my information. Could someone else come in and dispute the comps? Sure. But I think I'd rather leave them with them so that I can follow up the very next morning and get that taken care of.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. What else? Any other questions? The other thing that I would encourage from a seller's perspective is this, that you've got show and deposit, right? Show and deposit is going to give you, what do we say the example property was in the $600 to $800 price range, right? So when you run show and deposit and then take a look at all the stuff that's come on, what I like about this is kind of over here, right? These days on market. Now, days on market, understand days on market continues to count until you move the property to deposit. So show is so days on market can be a little bit of an inaccurate number because everyone moves to deposit at a different rate. However, the simple reality is you can go through here and see one by one, and yes, I said one by one, right here. So this came on the market on the 24th of February and went to show on the 27th. So even though this says days on market 47, it was really on the market for 3 days before they accepted an offer, right? And then you can literally go one by one through each of those properties and look at the same thing. This came on the market on March the 5th, was under agreement by March the 6th. Next one. This one came on the market the 23rd. Oh goodness, this one took forever. It was under agreement 6.5 days later. Right? 323 to 330. You see where I'm getting this information, right? At the bottom of each listing. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because it's easy for sellers. Here's the next one. On the market on the 1st, under agreement by the 5th. These are cold, hard facts that every other property in this price range that has seemingly come on while you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, have been on the market, right? You'll know what date you came on the market with your particular seller. And so you'll go and you'll kind of show them exactly, I would do exactly what I was doing. I might make a little chart, or I might just ask them to kind of visit with me, and I'll show them this on the screen. Here's another one on the market for 5 days. And we just keep going. And it's everything that's under agreement right now is under agreement in 4 days, 3 days, 5 days. 7 days has been the high so far, right? And Randy, I'm going to get there in just half a second. And then go back to your actives. Where am I? There we go. Your actives. You've got 10 active on the market in this particular price range, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are new to the market. So already we have properties that are just hitting the market. So they're not. We have nothing to say about those just yet because they're just to the market. Which means now we have 6 properties that are still on the market and not under agreement, right? And then we go over here again to days on market. 26, 28, 12, 26, 125, 54. Most of them are still under 30 days. However, what's real about each of these versus the ones that we showed you earlier that keep going under agreement is that the market's rejecting these numbers for these properties. It's not right, because the only other explanation is there's not enough buyers. And we know that to be absolutely false. We know there are far more buyers than there are properties for them to buy. Because what we also know about the show and deposit list, and if you don't know it for certain and don't want to make a sweeping generalization, get on the phone and call the listing agents. Hey, just wondered, 123 Main Street, does that go for multiple offers? Great, thanks. One by one. Make sure that you know that 97% of all the things that are under agreement went for multiple offers. Here's the other telling piece. This one, we've got a reduction, right? So we're already seeing signs of the ones that are still left and not under agreement that they're reducing. Randy, go ahead.
I have 2 questions. One being, since the inventory is so low, I think this is, one of the big questions I'm getting with this specific client. Where, in your professional opinion, because that's really the only way you can answer it, is the difference between a 4-bedroom and a 5-bedroom when it comes to comparing to other properties on the market? And I know we have our certain deductions with CMAs and ads and this, that, and the other thing. But in really thinking deep about it, a 4-bedroom versus a 5-bedroom, especially when all 5 bedrooms are very small, you know what I'm saying? So that's one of the struggles I'm having with this client. And then my next question to you, just in case it leads into the other, is one of the things that I think providing this client with would be the sale price to list price ratio. And only because, in my opinion, he priced this with what he wanted to walk away with versus letting the market drive it up. And like you had said previously, not getting the showings, not getting the people in the doors to then allow them to drive it up. They're not even being, I don't want to say given the opportunity, because anyone can schedule a showing, but they don't feel like they're being given that. Is that a case? Like, should I be providing him with that stat of like how they are selling for over ask? I don't know.
Well, so my answer is yes, right? Because here's the thing. In a town like Ridgefield, right, and you're going to have to do the stats on each of the towns that you guys are working in a price point like $600,000 to $800,000, which is the hottest price point, right, in this specific town that we happen to be using as an example. If the property is not sold within the first 5 to 7 days, the market has decided that it has rejected the price. There is no other explanation. There is no explanation about 4 bedrooms versus 5 bedrooms, because the answer to that is, from an appraiser's perspective, it's a $10,000 adjustment. Period. End of story. From a saleability perspective, 4 and 5 bedrooms are generally speaking the same. Generally speaking, right? It can be a bonus, or it can be a detriment. And what I mean by that is people who are looking for, who absolutely need 5 bedrooms, well, certainly that's going to be a bonus for them. People who can get away with 4, well, the 5th bedroom is just that. It's just extra that they're not necessarily willing to pay extra for. It's like having a pool. If you don't really need the pool or really love the pool can work against you. And the other example I'll give is an extra acre of land, right? People who have 2 acres versus 1 acre. Well, a building lot goes for $400,000. So therefore I should at least be able to get X for my extra acre. Well, but your extra acre is not a building lot, right? Your extra acre is more for people to pay taxes on, and more for people to maintain, and more lawn to mow. And so if it creates more privacy, and you're searching for that one buyer who's really looking for privacy, well then great, then maybe it's worth something to them. Except guys, let's talk about this for a second before we talk any more about stats. Let's talk about the definition of value. Who knows the definition of value? Can you put that on the table for me?
And what the buyer is willing to pay.
So write this down. Here's the definition of value. The definition of value is more for the same, or the same for less. More for the same, or the same for less. And here's what that means. Buyers buy based on value. That is just an absolute. They buy based on value. And so what they have to do is they have to see value in the property at the number it's being offered at. And if the only value in a scenario like Randy put on the table is that if you're priced up here at this upper tier, right, because you have that 5th bedroom, and all the comps are kind of down here with 4 bedrooms, or a little less land or whatever, but they're all selling, that means nobody values the extra stuff that you think has value. And so instead of asking more for what ultimately is viewed as the same, you need to offer it, if it's truly a value, you need to offer it out for the same price as all those other properties, because now from a saleability perspective, they go and say, ooh, that one has that extra bedroom for the same price as those other ones. That's value. You see how that works? It's not like you can write a list of perceived amenities and start attaching $10,000 more for this one and $20,000 more for that one. And that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Clearly, right, because the properties that we're talking about are the ones that the buyers are rejecting. So it's clearly not how it works. Does that make sense? Does that help from a value perspective?
Okay, so how would you talk to a seller who says, oh my God, my house is more valuable than all the other houses on my street because I have bluestone on my patio, and I have just painted everything. My nails are a special type, and my kitchen is, I mean, I just love it. It's the best kitchen, I could buy.
Yeah,
What do you feel
agreed.
with
And
that? It's like, that's all great.
yeah,
But like the house.
yeah. So role play that with me, Karen. Karen, you make a really great point, and I completely hear you about all of the upgrades that you've done on your property. I'm curious. Do you know exactly how buyers make choices between you and a competitive house?
Well, I think my house is the best. I mean, I've looked at Zillow, and nothing looks as updated and in good taste as mine.
Sure. No, I completely understand. And the house is awesome. I'm curious, would it surprise you to know that in my role as a listing agent, sellers tend to love their house the most of everybody each and every time, right? And so it's not uncommon for the owner of the property to kind of be in love with the property they're looking to sell, right? That would it surprise you that's not terribly uncommon?
I guess. I don't know if you say so.
Yeah. Well, again, it's just from my experience. And so the question I would have is this: would it surprise you to know that buyers typically make choices based on perceived value?
Yes.
Right. So that would surprise you?
No, it wouldn't surprise me.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise you. Okay. And so ultimately, the definition of value. May I share with you the definition of value in the housing industry?
Sure.
So the definition of value is either more for the same or the same for less, right? And so if what you're talking about is that your property offers more than many of the properties that you are seeing on a site like Zillow, do you see that value, the definition of value says, even though you have a little bit more, the way you drive competition is by offering it for the same, because the definition of value says the same or more for the same. So let me ask you this, Karen, which is better, do you think, for your bottom line, competition or negotiation from a buyer?
From a buyer's point of view?
So when you have buyers come to you, do you want them to be competing for your property or negotiating with you for your property?
I think that I want to compete.
Yeah, I would agree with that, right? And so do you see how one of the best ways to make sure that you have competition around your house is to position it in the market such that you are positioned the same as many of your competitors, but because of that bluestone and because of the updates in the kitchen and the really awesome nails, all of those things are going to set you apart. And so people are going to come and see your property over the others and worry that if they don't make a really strong offer right now, that somebody else is going to buy it. Do you see it's actually in your benefit?
So I'm going to the same party, but I look the best.
You know what? That is a perfect analogy. And so I'm curious, clearly you understand the analogy. Are you willing to put it in play to really maximize the benefit of this house?
I never looked at it that way, but that's really good.
Right. So that's just a conversation that one could have with a seller. Again, it's not perfect, but utilizing definition of value to help people understand that notice I didn't make Karen wrong. I didn't say, no, your bluestone isn't worth crap, right? Your nails, stop telling me about your nails, right? I don't care about your big bushes and whatever, right? I didn't make her wrong. Instead, I attempted to make her right and yet show her that being right, having your house set itself apart, still requires you to be positioned the same as your competitors, because now you're the next one to sell. Go ahead, Rand.
Rick, can I be her savvy friend sitting there with her? Real estate agent. So what happens if in that situation where I go and price myself competitively, or Karen does, prices her house competitively, what happens if I get offers that aren't above and it doesn't do what you think is going to happen? Well, what do I have to do as a seller then?
Yeah, so
What if
so
I
that's a
get
great
offers? Yeah.
so that's a great question. And the first thing I want to be really clear about is that this is not me thinking it's going to go one way or the other, right? And so this is not my subjective opinion. This is me delivering market data to you. So these are objective facts that the properties that I showed you that have gone under agreement, based on the positioning that they chose, drove competition such that they got multiple offers and were able to choose, right? So again, there's nothing subjective about this, because at the end of the day, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you get to choose the path forward. I don't own this asset, you do. And so you get to choose the path forward. To answer the question of what happens if there's an adjustment in the price, or if we go on the market at a lower number than you feel you want to because of the negotiation aspect, the answer is don't sell it. I mean, truly, if you take a price adjustment and the competition doesn't show up, well, then what that might be telling you is that this is not the right time for you to be a seller.
Wow.
If you get offers, just say no to them. Right?
So,
Guys, I want to really plant a seed with you today, and that sometimes having these conversations, we reject going to the place of simply saying, maybe this is not the right time for you. Look, I'm not looking to make you wrong. I'm simply talking with you about market conditions that drive the results for you.
okay, so that's hard to say, okay, in a listing presentation. And let's say I say that and they say, well, okay, well, maybe it's not the right time. And then a week later, it's listed at the price that they wanted, and either they have to have a price reduction or, God forbid, it even sells.
Well, and so we're talking about, so let me break that down into two separate answers. If you're talking about having a property that you're looking to get a reduction on, well, you're not canceling the listing. If they finally say to you, you know what, I think you're right. I think that the market as it is today is not willing to deliver what I'm looking for this property. Now, just as an aside, if you don't have some questions prepared around that comment, after what we've just experienced in the last 9 months, right? Because you then have to have questions prepared that say, okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I completely support that decision. I just have a concern. May I share that concern with you? My concern is that we have seen appreciation and competition for houses like we have almost never seen in the last 6 to 9 months. And we expect it to continue for the next minimally 3 to 6 or maybe 3 to 9 months throughout the rest of this year. By making a decision to not put your home on the market and see it through to closing today, my concern is that you may be saying no to the most robust and beneficial seller's market that we have seen maybe ever. And so do you have information that says if you waited a year, that something would be different?
I don't.
Yeah, and so do you see my concern there? Because what I want you to do is maximize your profits.
Right. Okay. So, but if whatever they say, no, we're not going to list it, then obviously you're the knowledge broker. You're the one who puts all the cards on the table. Somebody else may come in the next day and say, oh yeah, we can sell for like whatever, 1.7 million, put it on the market.
Yeah. So here's where I was going with that. So if you're using that conversation inside of a reduction and they still decide, I think I want to take it off the market, great. I support that. We will withdraw it from the market and it will sit withdrawn until my listing contract expires. I don't cancel anything, right?
No.
Now, if you're having a conversation at a listing table, the initial listing consultation, and you're having some conversations around the pricing, right? That's a slightly different conversation. You, as the agent, need to know what your threshold for taking something outside of the parameters that are reasonable actually is. When I was a listing agent, it was 10%. If someone was going over 10% from what I really thought the market would bear, I would turn it down kindly and move on. If it was 10% or under, I would let them know that based on the data we just reviewed, it appears to me that we may have to agree to disagree with the best positioning for your property to accomplish showings, offers, and a closing. However, if we can agree to disagree, I'm more than willing to kind of test the waters, knowing that there are some negatives to that for you long term. Test the water for 7 days or for 14 days. And then depending on what we see in those 14 days, let's agree that we will pre-sign an adjustment for 14 days from now. Tell me, what number do you think you want to test for the first 14 days? And what number are you willing to move to at 14 days so that we can pre-sign that? To me, it is unfair and it is unprofessional, and it does not deliver a real consultative experience if we just tell sellers what they want to hear just to have our sign up. I think that there are instances where you can and should take listings, especially in today's market, where you're over the mark a little bit or a lot of it, because you can't reduce a price with a call banker sign in the front of it, right? If it's not your listing, you have no opportunity to then reduce it. So as long as you're clear with the seller that the data, we're interpreting the data differently, then you move ahead. If it's your business plan, you move ahead with something slightly overpriced, and then you move it down in time. Does that help?
Yeah.
But again, I would know from a business perspective, you own that business, right? So what is your standard? Do you say no to anything over 10%, over 15%, over a certain dollar amount? Or do you say yes to everything, right? For me, again, it was 10%. If they decided to go over, I decided I wasn't so interested, right? Because things that were 10% over very rarely reduced enough to catch up with the market and create a closing opportunity for them.
I know. The worst thing is to have an overpriced house and it doesn't sell. You tell the seller what price is the right price. It expires and somebody else lists it.
Right. And here's a script I used to use for that. I would rather turn you down now than let you down later.
Okay.
Right. I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later.
Okay.
Because if we list and it's so far, 2 weeks later, we're going to be at each other's throats. There's going to be resentment and distrust and all these. I mean, I've seen it happen over and over and over again, right? And those of you on this call who have been doing this for any length of time, you know exactly that's exactly what happens, right? And it just gets ugly.
Yes, and then you get a bad review.
Yeah, exactly right. Now today's day and age of reviews, right? So I know we kind of pivoted into a conversation about price reductions from stats, but I hope that the conversations were useful in that you can utilize stats to level the playing field, right? Statistics will help you remove the subjectivity, because sellers, here's the other thing I want you to recognize. Sellers are subjective, and they are especially subjective about their property. Period. It's just the way sellers behave. It's how they exist. It's like they all went to seller school and they taught them all the same exact thing, right? You just need to understand how to balance that or counterbalance that with objectivity. Here's what the data says. Don't get caught in a conversation about your opinion, because your opinion is not relevant. I'm sorry if that's hurtful to some of you. Your opinion is not relevant, and it will only serve to get you in trouble. Because when you continue to give your opinion and your advice, and then the house doesn't sell, guess what? You've set yourself up with a big, huge target on the front of you because it's all now your fault. Instead, when you objectively bring fact to the table and ask questions around that fact, based on the data that we've just reviewed, based on the data that you're seeing, talk to me about what you believe the next step forward should be. Talk to me about what you think we should do to get more eyeballs on the property. And a lot of you are unwilling to ask those questions because you think the answer is going to be, well, why don't you just advertise it more and that'll solve all the problems? So you don't ask the question. I would instead be ready with an objection handler if they do say, well, why don't you just advertise it more? Great, and talk to me about what more advertising is going to accomplish, right? If in fact the data is saying that the market is rejecting your current positioning, what will we accomplish by telling more people about your mispositioned property? Tell me how that's not going. I'm concerned because I think that might backfire on you. Frankly, at this positioning, I think I would rather tell far fewer people about the property. Right? Here's my point. My point is, you have to build muscles as a listing agent to have strong conversations around objective fact and know that the data that you're presenting is the path forward. And sometimes you have people who reject it. And that's where at some point you get to a point to say, you know, it kind of sounds like you and I it seems like we're always going to have to agree that we're always going to disagree about the interpretation of this data. And so I'm curious, where does that leave us? I want what's best for you. You hired me because I have an expertise in helping people get what's best for them based on objective data. Can we take one more look objectively at the numbers that drive buyers' decisions? Month supply of inventory, comparables, selling strategy charts, multiple offers on everything else that's come on the market, right? Here's another script you can use. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my biggest concern for you right now is that what I'm seeing from the data is that your competitors are using you to obtain buyers and offers on their property. Properties are coming on the market or were on the market right in and around when you came on the market that buyers are choosing over yours. Bridesmaid, 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 bridesmaid. We have all these brides and you're standing over here as the continued bridesmaid. And at some point, one has to recognize that what may be happening here is that these other properties are utilizing you as a benchmark and showing buyers better value. And there's only one way to compete with that. You need to raise your value, which is done by adjusting your positioning. Make sense? All right, guys, I am so sorry. I didn't realize what time it was. We are so over time. And unfortunately, I was supposed to be on the phone 4 minutes ago. So if it was with one of you, I am sorry if I missed our appointment. I have to just take a quick peek and see who I was supposed to call. So let's do this. Let's finish for now. This was recorded, so it'll be on tomorrow morning. Latest tomorrow morning, maybe even later this afternoon. So if you want to go back and kind of listen to some of those scripts or listen to the process for pulling a lot of that data and those stats, help yourself to that recording. I hope this was helpful. And with that, I will either see you at 1 o'clock for those of you who are joining me for writing and presenting an offer, or I'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
This was great. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.